We all have been in conversations where we want the ground to open up and swallow us whole. If you haven't, I have. And it is a very conversant feeling, if I may say. I have been in it more than once, in more than one occasion, on more than one day. I am an overthinker personally, so when these things happen, I tend to think about it and wish the ground would keep opening and swallowing me up till I get out of there. But here are some things that I struggle with when communicating, and you may struggle with them too. Let's be honest. There is such a thing as a bad conversation. No matter the angle you look at it from. If it's bad, it's bad. We've all been there. I have been there. I have been in conversations where I just wanted the ground to literally open up, swallow me whole, and not spit me out at all. But there is such a thing as a bad conversation, regardless of the angle you look at it from. And as if you're someone like me that overthinks everything, you will keep replaying that conversation in your mind. I think of 100 different ways it could have ended better or it could have run better. I assure you, there's no 100 different ways the conversation has passed and you have communicated what you wanted to communicate. One of the many things that I struggle with personally is getting my points across to the other party. And you may wonder, I do this. Yes, I do this. I still struggle in real life. This is real life, by the way, but I still struggle outside this space. It is a struggle for me, mainly because I don't want to cut them off. I don't want to be rude and keep interjecting when someone else is talking, in as much as I may not agree with their point. I don't want to seem rude, and they keep on going and going and going, and I'm trying to just be a very nice listener and listen. Interjectories are easier when you're talking with your friends or people that are close to you because you have a rapport, you have a strong foundation. But when you're talking to a stranger, when you're communicating with a stranger, it's quite difficult to like interject when you're saying something, regardless of how important or unimportant it may be. And this is something that I struggle with when I'm communicating with other people. Do I want to get better at it? Yes. Will I interrupt anybody's conversations? No. So that is a work in progress. I have a very high expectation bar when it comes to conversations and communication. As a person, my expectation bar is very high. When I see somebody and they look like a very good conversator or conversationalist, and I talk to them and they do not meet the bar that I have raised, I get very disappointed. Now, mind you, my bar doesn't raise per person or per conversation. I just have a very fixed bar. I look for all the important things. How well are you at rapport? How good are you at interjectory? Do you just assume or do you actually ask questions where you do not know? These are all very important things that I look out for when I'm having a conversation. And most importantly, the most important thing that I look out for when having a conversation is how much you talk about small things like greetings or the weather. You can only say the weather like twice in a conversation before it becomes very, very awkward. You can only also say greetings like twice in the conversation before it also becomes very, very awkward. Unless it's a group of you or as you're talking, people keep coming in and you're like, oh, hi, hi, hi. But if I'm talking one-on-one to you and I've said hello and you have said hello and I've said how are you and you have said fine and you and I've said fine, that is good enough greeting. For me personally, I don't know about you, but that is where I stand on it. If you keep circling back to how are you, how is your day, what are you up to, how is your day, what are you doing, how is your day, how are you right now, we have an issue. I just can't, my brain can't, I mentally cannot. My expectation bar for conversation is quite low. People have higher things. I just do not want to circle around greeting for 30 minutes. I want to have a nice conversation. It mustn't be meaningful. It mustn't be educational. It could be entertainment, whatever it may be. I just do not want to circle around greeting for 30 minutes or for 10 minutes. 5 is too much. At most 45 seconds. I'm good, okay? And due to this reason, my level of conversation or communication with people is quite low, and it's difficult to tell somebody don't greet me again, especially in a country like Nigeria where we thrive on greeting and respect and posture and prostrating. I have nothing against it for them, it's just not my biggest cup of tea. So my expectation bar is quite low, but I do have an expectation bar when it comes to communications and conversations. maybe I should trash that, but no, you have to have standards. You do. So that's something else I struggle with. People don't meet the bar. And I don't expect you to like meet the bar. I just expect you to be good at talking. Don't circle around greetings for 5 minutes. Don't circle around the weather for 5 minutes unless the weather is the subject of the conversation. For example, it's raining and we're all complaining that it's raining. That's a good one. But if it's raining and you're like, oh, it's raining, and then you come back, it's raining, and then you come back, it's raining. Yeah, I don't. It is what it is. So I struggle with lowering my expectation bar, and I do lower it. I try very, very hard to lower my bar, especially when I realize the conversation isn't going in the direction I want it to go. I try to, okay, let's bring it down a bit, but there's only so much I can bring it down to when we are rotating around greetings for the past 10 texts. So that is a struggle. I am trying to be better at lowering my expectations when it comes to communication. I understand very well that we're all different people, and that is fine, really. It is fine. And you may say I'm a hypocrite for having the same bar for everybody, but I assure you, it's a very basic bar. I didn't even add be an expert on it, so why are you greeting me for the last 10 minutes? Why? Moving on. Another thing that I struggle with is the humor avoidance tactic. When I ask you a question and you just laugh, or you say something that is humorous. There is nothing humorous in when I ask you a question and you're meant to give an answer and then you start laughing. Why? I still don't understand why. And this is very popular on TV or radio shows, especially on radio shows where someone says something, it is very obviously offensive. And then rather than say, I'm sorry about that, they make the correction, but then they laugh, especially in Nigeria. The humor avoidance tactic is something that I really dislike when I'm having a conversation or when I'm communicating with somebody. If you can't be humble enough and be apologetic when you do something wrong, why are we here? Why? There was this radio show I was listening to one day in the car, and he had a guest. He mentioned her name, and then he went on to mention her accomplishments as a guest. He mentioned a lot of things, and then he came to this point where he mentioned she is a mother, but he didn't mention that she was married. And I know to some people it is not a big deal, but I live in Nigeria. It is a very big deal here. The first assumption would have been she got wedded out of wedlock, and of course it shouldn't bother her or anybody what other people think, but that's not what I'm leading to. Now when he finished mentioning all these things, she said, and a wife, meaning he forgot that part. It wasn't per se hostile, she just said it like a mother and a wife. And rather than him say, oh sorry, and a wife, he laughed. Like he full on laughed, like and a wife. And then my father and I turned to each other and said, what's funny? It wasn't funny. You made a mistake. You said something that was wrong. And I told you the correct thing. And then you laugh. Why are you laughing? Why are you avoiding your... I don't want to say it's responsibility, but it is responsibility. Man up, own your actions. So it is something that I struggle with when it comes to communicating with other people. I expect you to do better for yourself. Not necessarily for me, being the other part in the conversation. But for you, you can't avoid everything with humor. You can't. I try very hard not to avoid everything with humor. I love humor. I love dry, witty humor. It's my favorite type of humor. But I don't expect you to, I'm alive, I'm so sad. He didn't say I'm so sorry, so he just said, ha 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 ha, I'm alive, and then he moved on. He didn't, the humor avoidance tactic grates on my nerves. It's something that I struggle with when communicating. Thing is, I want to do communication, but I have banned you for further or for future conversations. The biggest thing that I struggle with when it comes to communication or conversations is actually starting the conversation. It is a very big issue of mine. My friends know this, people that I talk to know this. I'm very bad at bringing forth topics for conversations, especially when you use the phrase bring a topic. I go blank. I feel like a lot of us go blank when someone says bring a topic. What do you mean bring a topic? We were having a very good rapport. we started talking about nothing and everything at the same time, and then he just randomly go bring a topic. What am I meant to do? Pull it out of a magician's hat or out of a bunny's head? I have nothing. I'm very bad at starting conversations. I'm good at continuing them. Man, I'm great at continuing them. But starting, that's a struggle. It may be because I am an ambivert and I'm more introvert than extrovert when it comes to the ambivert scale. But starting conversations is not my forte at all. At all. And I need to learn how to start conversations, because you have to be willing to walk up to the person in the room that you want to hear from. You have to be proactive enough. And if you don't have the ability to start a conversation, you would literally just be looking at them from across the room. So starting conversation is something that I struggle with very much. And I hope you don't, because it is a very, very, very stressful thing to maneuver when you want to talk to somebody. This is why I always do extensive research before I talk to people. When I can. Always. Always. Extensive research. So I know what to start with. It's a hustle. It is. A major thing that I struggle with is being invested in a conversation after being disappointed in your perspective or opinion. And I have the best scenario to paint this. I took an art class last year. And in my art class, there was this guy who had a lot of opinions on a lot of topics. It was great. The problem I had with his opinions on a lot of topics was that he was very rigid about them. Now, there's nothing wrong in standing your ground about what you believe in. I believe very much in that, which is very true. But there is something wrong in a good number of people telling you, no, that's not how it is, and you are still hell-bent on proving that your point is right, regardless of the fact that they have shown you evidence. And that was the problem that I had with him. He was rigid. He was rigid in his opinion, in his perspective. And it was quite disappointing to see, because he couldn't be reasoned with. Now, conversation or communication is a two-way party thing. So I give you my opinion, you give me your opinion, I question your opinion, I question my opinion. And it's very frustrating to talk to somebody who is always questioning your opinion, but you can't question theirs. It is very, very frustrating. So I just kept, I simply became very disappointed anytime I had to listen to his point of view. And I found it very difficult to keep an open mind after that, because you do not want to, nobody likes a know-it-all. That's one. There's no such thing as a know-it-all. So when you act like one, it's very, very frustrating. And then nobody wants to argue with somebody who doesn't want to hear your point of view. Or nobody wants to talk to somebody who doesn't want to listen to your point of view. They just want to present theirs and they want it to be fine with theirs. That's not how communication works. So I find it very difficult to keep an open mind after conversations or communications like that. I find it very, very hard to keep an open mind. It is one of my flaws, maybe my biggest, but I like to think that I am not the problem, or it is not majorly my fault, because the other party also has to go work on themselves. But still, on my side, yeah, it's an issue. It's something that I struggle with. Keeping an open mind after I become disappointed in your POV or in how you present your case. And they always get defensive. Why? I don't know. But it's something that I have thought about. So these are things that I struggle with when communicating with people. It's quite an extensive list, I have to say, but I am working on them majorly. The last one, I don't think I have a problem though. I may be, but I don't think I am. But I may be. This was a very fun conversation. It was so lovely. And I'll see you next week on the Tiny Chair Talk.